Welcome to class, student. Today, we'll be looking at a very important course titled Political Theory and Philosophy. Then under it, we'll be looking at a very vital topic titled Introduction to Political Theory and Philosophy. Political theory and political philosophy are intertwined disciplines that both seek to understand the nature and purpose of government and political system. While they share common ground, each has its distinct approach and focus. What is political philosophy? Political philosophy represents a specialized branch of philosophical inquiry that investigates the theoretical underpinnings and conceptual framework of political life. This discipline employs how individuals relate to society, examines optimal ways to organize collective existence, and considers how resources and authority should be distributed among people and institutions. At its core, political philosophy grapples with fundamental questions about the boundaries of governmental authority and the principles that should guide political decision-making. The field analyzes essential concepts including statehood, governance structure, power dynamics, legitimacy, civic duty, justice, equality, and freedom, investigating how these ideas shape the lives of citizens, communities, and public policies. Distinguishing political philosophy from related fields. Political philosophy differs from political science in its approach and objective, while political scientists concentrate on empirical analysis, describing how government and political institutions actually function in practice. Political philosophers engage in normative inquiry, examining how these instructions ought to operate and what values should guide their actions. The relationship between political philosophy and political theory can be understood in different ways. Some scholars use the terms interchangeably, while others distinguish them between them. According to one interpretation, political philosophy addresses broad fundamental questions about the nature of political life, whereas political theory focuses on analyzing and comparing specific institutional arrangements while maintaining closer ties to scientific methodologies. Political philosophy shares deep connection with ethics, the philosophical study of moral phenomena, and is sometimes regarded as a subdivision of ethical inquiry. However, while ethics examines right conduct and human flourishing in the broadest sense, political philosophy narrows its focus specifically to the political realm. The field also overlaps significantly with social philosophy, though they maintain distinct emphasis. Social philosophy examines various forms of social phenomena broadly, while political philosophy concentrates more specifically on questions of power and governance. Additional related disciplines include philosophy of law and economics. Political philosophy dives into the abstract and fundamental questions that underlay all political thinking. This field concerns itself with exploring the deeper meaning behind concepts like power, authority, justice, and freedom. Primary characteristics of political philosophy: to investigate abstract concepts such as political authority, governance principles, justice, liberty, and the state's proper role. Uses philosophical method including logical reasoning, debate, and conceptual examination. Addresses questions like what makes a government legitimate, what constitutes true justice, how should we balance individual freedom with collective needs. Built upon this work of influential philosophers including Plato, Aristotle, Hobbes, Locke, Mill, and modern thinkers. Political theory takes a more practical approach, examining how political systems actually function in the real world. This field bridges abstract philosophy with concrete political realities. Primary characteristics of political theory: studies and compares actual political systems, governmental structures, and ideological movements. employs both physiological reasoning and empirical research methods from social sciences, focus on questions like how do different governmental systems affect citizens, how have democratic institutions evolved, what are the practical effects of various political ideologies, draws from scholars such as the Tocqueville, the Weber, and the contemporary researchers, how they work together. These fields complement each other in important ways. Political philosophy establishes the theoretical groundwork that political theory uses to analyze a real-world situation. Many scholars work across both areas using philosophical insight to better understand actual political institutions and practices. Core political ideologies. Political thought encompasses several major ideological frameworks: the anarchism, the conservatism, the liberalism, and the socialism. The anarchism advocates for eliminating centralized government authority, believing that stateless society can better achieve liberty and equality, while the conservatism emphasizes preserving preserving established institutions and traditions, arguing that gradual change is preferable to radical reform that might discard valuable historical wisdom. Liberalism champions individual rights, personal freedom, legal protection, private property, and tolerance, viewing government role as protecting these values. Socialism promotes collective ownership and equitable resource distribution, seeking to address inequalities stemming from private ownership, class division, and inherited advantages. Additional perspectives include environmentalism, realism, idealism, consequentialism, perfectionism, individualism, and communitarianism. Methodological approach. Political philosophers use different methods to develop and evaluate their ideas. We have the particularists, the foundationalists, the universalists, and the cultural relativists. The particularists work from specific cases upward, building broader theories from individual observations and judgments. The foundationalists start with basic principles and construct comprehensive system from this fundamental assumptions, sometimes using theories about human nature as their starting point. The universalists believe that core moral and political principles apply across all cultures, while cultural relativists argue that such principles vary between different societies, historical origins and development. The term political philosophy derived from the ancient Greek concept politica, referring to affairs of the state, and philosophia, meaning love of wisdom. This makes political philosophy one of the oldest philosophical disciplines with practitioners across numerous cultures throughout history. Political philosophy has ancient origins, beginning with great thinkers like Plato and Aristotle. Ancient Chinese philosophy contributed Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism, while Hindu and Buddhist traditions shaped political thought in ancient India. During the medieval period, political philosophy was heavily influenced by the interaction between classical Greek ideas and religious thought in both Christian and Islamic contexts. The modern era brought a shift towards secular thinking and saw the emergence of numerous influential schools of thought, including social contract theory, liberalism, conservatism, utilitarianism, nihilism, Marxism, and anarchism. Distinction between political philosophy and political theory. Political philosophy asks why question about politics. Why should we have government? Why do certain principles matter? Why should we organize society in particular ways? Political theory shows how and what questions. How do political systems actually work? What are their effects? What can we learn from comparing different approaches? Both fields remain essential for comprehensively understanding the complex relationship between individual communities and governmental structures. The fundamental concepts in political analysis. Political philosophers employ various foundational concepts to develop theories and understand political domain. Politics itself encompasses diverse activities related to governance, collective decision making, resolving conflicting interests, and exercising power. Some theories characterize politics as the skillful art of engaging effectively in this complex act. The state government and power. The nature of statehood. The state stands as a cornerstone concept in political philosophy, representing an organized political entity composed of people known as citizens. States typically maintain control over specific geographical territories, establish and enforce legal system, and function as the legal entities with rights and obligations when interacting with other states. However, the precise definition of what constitutes a state remains contested among philosophers. Some emphasize the state's monopoly to unlegitimate violence and the subordination of many individual wills to the authority of governing few. Others conceptualize the state as a social contract created for mutual benefit and security. States are distinguished by their organizational structure and the extent of power they wield, contrasting with stateless societies that operate through more loosely organized social network and less centralized relationship pattern. Government structure and function. Government refers to institutional frameworks and that exercise control and provides governance for power for people within political entity, typically a state. Political philosophers hold varying views about government's ultimate purpose. Some see it as valuable in itself, while others view it as a means to achieve other goods such as peace and prosperity. Some governments establish foundational principles through constitution that define governmental structure, function and limitation, while others operate with fewer formal constraints. Anarchists reject government authority entirely, advocating for self-governance without centralized forms of government. We have the democratic system, the authoritarian regime, the totalitarian system, the aristocracies and the theocracies. The nature of political power. Power represents the capacity to produce intended effects or control the action of people and institutions. Power can derive from consent as when people eventually follow charismatic leader or form coalition as the tyrannical rulers enforce complex compliance through fear and repression. Government powers typically include legislative authority to create or revoke laws, executive power to enforce laws, and judicial power to resolve legal disputes. Legitimacy and authority. Legitimacy concerns the rightful or justified use of power. Political philosophers examine whether, why, and under what conditions government powers are legitimate. Common requirements include acquiring power through established procedures and using it for power purposes. For example, representative democratic system accept that election determine legitimate. Thank you for listening.